My name is Lena, and I am 28 years old living in the heart of New York City, where the rent is high and the living spaces are very small. I work as a junior marketing executive for a boutique firm in Manhattan, which means I have to look my best every single day because image is everything in my industry. When I first moved into my apartment on the Upper East Side, I thought I had found the jackpot because the building was old but charming, and I had a roommate named Sarah who seemed like the perfect match for me. Sarah was 27 and worked in some vague area of public relations, which meant she was always dressed in the latest trends and had a smile that could light up a room. We met through a mutual friend at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, and within a week we were signing a lease together. At first everything was great, and we would spend our Friday nights drinking wine and talking about our dreams of making it big in the city that never sleeps. I really felt like I had found a sister in this massive concrete jungle where it is so easy to feel lonely and small. I shared my deepest secrets with her, and I even told her about how hard I had worked to save up for my small collection of designer clothes and jewelry that I called my armor. These were the items that made me feel powerful when I walked into a boardroom full of men who didn't think I belonged there. But as the months went by, the mask that Sarah wore began to slip, and the sweet girl I thought I knew started to disappear. It started with small things like her leaving her dirty dishes in the sink for days until they grew mold, or her borrowing my expensive organic milk without asking and never replacing it. I tried to be the bigger person because I hate conflict and I wanted to keep the peace in our home. I would just wash the dishes myself and buy more milk while telling myself that living with people is always a compromise. However, the situation took a dark turn about 6 months into our lease when Sarah started hosting parties on Tuesday nights when she knew I had to be up at 6 in the morning for important meetings. She would invite over random people she met at bars, and they would stay until 3 in the morning laughing and screaming, while I laid in my bed with a pillow over my head crying from frustration. When I finally gathered the courage to talk to her about it, she didn't apologize or try to understand my perspective. Instead, she looked at me with cold eyes and told me that I was being a boring person who didn't know how to have fun, and that if I didn't like it, I should just move out. That was the first time I saw the real Sarah, and it scared me because she seemed to enjoy the fact that she was making me miserable. From that day on, the atmosphere in our apartment became toxic and heavy like a thick fog that wouldn't lift. Sarah started a campaign of psychological warfare against me that made me feel like I was losing my mind. She would accidentally knock over my framed photos of my family when she was vacuuming and then pretend she didn't notice. One morning, I woke up and couldn't find my keys anywhere, and I ended up being an hour late for a presentation, which cost me a potential promotion. I found them 3 days later, hidden deep inside the pocket of a coat I hadn't worn in months. I knew I hadn't put them there because I am a very organized person who always leaves my keys on the hook by the door. Sarah would just smirk at me when I mentioned it and say that I was probably just stressed and becoming forgetful in my old age. The bullying started to get personal too, as she would make snide comments about my body when I was getting ready for work, or tell me that my favorite dress made me look like I was trying too hard to be young. She knew exactly where my insecurities were, and she poked at them like a child poking a bruise just to see me winced. The final straw came during the 8th month of our lease when I came home to find a random guy sleeping on our living room couch who I had never met before. He was shirtless, and there were empty beer cans all over the floor, including on top of my favorite coffee table book about the history of fashion. I told Sarah that night that I was done, and that I would not be renewing the lease with her when it ended in 2 months. I told her I was moving into a studio apartment by myself, where I could finally have some peace and quiet. Sarah did not take the news well at all because she knew she couldn't afford the rent on our current place without my half of the money. She screamed at me for an hour, calling me a selfish person and a terrible friend who was abandoning her in a time of need. She told me that I would regret crossing her and that she was going to make the rest of my time in the apartment a living nightmare. I tried to ignore her threats, but I started to notice that things were disappearing from my room. First, it was a small gold necklace that my grandmother had given me for my 21st birthday, which broke my heart because it was the only thing I had left of her. Then, it was my expensive vitamin C serum and my luxury night creams that I had saved up for months to buy. When I asked her about them, she just laughed and told me to check the trash because maybe I had thrown them away by mistake. I was living in a constant state of anxiety, and I started locking my bedroom door every time I left the house, even if I was just going to the mailbox. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, and I counted down the days until I could finally escape her presence. On her very last day of the move, I had to work a double shift at the office because we were launching a new campaign for a major client. I was exhausted but excited because I knew that when I got home, Sarah would be gone, and I would have the apartment to myself for the final few days of the month to pack in peace. I walked through the front door at 9 in the evening expecting to feel a sense of relief, but instead I was hit by a chemical smell so strong that it burned my throat. I ran to my bedroom and pushed the door open only to scream at the sight that met my eyes. Sarah had gone into my room despite the lock, which she must have picked with a hairpin or a knife, and she had destroyed everything I owned. My beautiful cream-colored rug was covered in black ink, and my makeup vanity had been smashed with all my powders and eyeshadows crushed into the carpet. But the worst part was my closet, because Sarah had taken several bottles of concentrated bleach and poured them over every single piece of clothing I owned. My silk blouses were disintegrating before my eyes, and my designer dresses were covered in huge white splotches that looked like chemical burns. Even my favorite pair of expensive Italian leather heels had been snapped in half at the heel and thrown into a pile of wet, ruined fabric. I stood there in the middle of the wreckage of my life, shaking and sobbing, because I couldn't believe someone could be so cruel. On my pillow sat a small yellow sticky note with her neat handwriting that just said, "Have fun replacing everything, you pathetic bitch." For a moment, I wanted to call her and scream or go to her new place and throw a brick through her window, but then a strange sense of calm washed over me. I realized that Sarah wanted me to have a breakdown, and she wanted me to crawl back to her or be defeated by her actions. I wiped my tears away and took a deep breath because I knew that getting mad wouldn't fix my clothes, but getting even would. I pulled out my cell phone and started taking pictures of every single thing she had touched. I took close-up photos of the bleach stains on my silk dresses and the broken heels of my shoes. I took photos of the smashed makeup and the ink on the rug, and I made sure to get a clear shot of the note she left on my pillow. I also remembered that our building had recently installed security cameras in the hallways after a series of package thefts. I went down to the basement and found our building manager, a grumpy old man named Mr. Henderson, who usually didn't like to be bothered. I told him what happened and showed him the pictures on my phone, and he was so horrified that he agreed to let me see the footage from that morning. We watched the screen together and saw Sarah walking into the apartment building at 10 in the morning, carrying a large plastic shopping bag filled with 4 huge bottles of bleach. She was smiling and laughing on her phone as she entered the elevator, and then an hour later the cameras caught her leaving with the empty bottles in a trash bag, looking very satisfied with herself. Mr. Henderson was a stickler for the rules, and he hated when tenants damaged his property, so he gave me a digital copy of the footage on a flash drive. I went back upstairs and started a detailed spreadsheet of every single item that was ruined. I looked up the current retail price for my blouses, my dresses, my shoes, and my makeup. I even included the cost of the professional cleaning that would be required for the rug and the repainting of the walls where she had smeared lipstick. By the time I was finished, the total cost of the damage was over $4,000. I knew that Sarah's half of the security deposit was only $1,000, which wouldn't cover even a quarter of the damage she had caused. I waited until the next morning to call the property management company that owned our building. I spoke with a woman named Brenda in the legal department and explained the situation with a very calm and professional voice. I told her that I had extensive photographic evidence of the vandalism and video footage of the perpetrator entering and leaving the scene with the materials used to commit the crime. I also told her that I had filed a formal police report for property damage over $1,000, which is a felony in the state of New York. Brenda was very helpful and told me that because the lease was in both of our names, they would normally split the deposit, but since there was clear criminal activity and damage to the unit, they would hold the entire amount. She said the landlord would have to use a large portion of it to repair the apartment, and that I could file a claim for the rest through their insurance and legal channels. But I wanted to make it more personal than that, because I wanted Sarah to feel the loss in her bank account the same way I felt it in my heart. I sent a formal demand letter to Sarah's new address, which I had found on a piece of mail she left behind by accident. In the letter, I attached the photos and the link to the video, and I told her that she had 48 hours to pay me the full $4,000 for my ruined belongings, or I would take the evidence to her new employer and file a civil lawsuit that would follow her for the rest of her life. I knew she had just started a new job at a high-end public relations firm, and the last thing she wanted was a felony charge or a public lawsuit for being a crazy roommate. Sarah tried to call me 50 times that day, but I blocked her number and all of her social media accounts because I didn't want to hear her lies or her excuses. She then tried to have her friends message me saying that I was being dramatic and that it was just some clothes, but I ignored them too. Finally, on the second day, I received an email from her father, who was a wealthy lawyer in Connecticut. He was clearly embarrassed by his daughter's behavior, and he told me that he was authorizing a wire transfer for the full amount of $4,000 if I promised not to go to the police or her employer. I agreed, but only if he also signed a document stating that Sarah forfeited her entire share of the security deposit to me, as well to cover the emotional distress and the cost of moving. He agreed within 10 minutes because he just wanted the problem to go away. A few days later, the money hit my bank account, and I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I had $4,000 from her father, and I knew I would be getting the full $2,000 security deposit back from the landlord since I had cleaned the rest of the apartment until it sparkled. That was $6,000 in total, which was way more than the actual value of my older clothes. I decided that this was my chance for a fresh start and a complete transformation. I moved into my new studio apartment, which was small but beautiful with large windows that let in the morning light. I spent the next 2 weeks shopping at some of the best stores in the city, and I bought pieces that were even higher quality than the ones Sarah had destroyed. I bought a classic black wool coat that made me feel like a movie star and a pair of designer boots that were so comfortable I could walk miles in them. I replaced my makeup with the highest quality brands, and I even bought a new set of silk pajamas that felt like a hug every time I put them on. Every time I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the girl who had been bullied and intimidated by a mean roommate, but instead I saw a woman who was strong and capable. I felt like a butterfly emerging from a cocoon, and my confidence at work skyrocketed because I wasn't constantly worried about what I would find when I went home. About a month later, I saw a post on a mutual friend's Instagram that showed Sarah looking miserable in a tiny dark apartment in a bad part of town. Apparently, her father had been so angry about the $4,000 he had to pay that he cut her off financially and told her she had to survive on her own. Without her deposit money, and with the bills piling up, she had to move into a place with 3 other roommates who she hated. She was constantly posting rants about how unfair life was and how people were out to get her, but I just laughed and kept scrolling. The best part of the whole situation was a few months later when I attended a big industry event at a hotel in Midtown. I was wearing one of my new designer dresses, and I looked incredible if I do say so myself. I was talking to a group of influential people when I saw Sarah working at the coat check desk for the event. She had apparently lost her fancy public relations job because she couldn't keep her temper under control, and she was now working hourly jobs to make ends meet. When it was time for me to leave, I walked up to the desk and handed her my ticket. She looked up and our eyes met, and for a second she looked like she was going to cry or scream. I didn't say anything mean or gloat about my success because I didn't have to. I just gave her a polite smile and tipped her a $20 bill before walking out into the crisp New York City air. I could feel her staring at my back as I walked away in my expensive shoes that she had technically paid for. It was the most satisfying moment of my life, because I realized that Sarah's attempt to destroy me had actually only made me better and stronger. She had tried to take away my confidence and my joy, but instead she had funded my evolution into the woman I always wanted to be. I still have the note she left on my pillow in a small box in my closet as a reminder to never let anyone treat me that way again. Whenever I have a hard day or feel like I am not enough, I look at that note, and then I look at my beautiful new wardrobe and I smile. Living well is truly the best revenge, and in the end, I didn't just get my money back, I got my life back too. Sarah is still out there somewhere complaining to anyone who will listen, but she is just a ghost from my past, while I am moving forward into a very bright future. The city feels bigger and more full of possibility than it ever did before, and I know that no matter what challenges come my way, I have the strength to handle them and come out on top. Every time I zip up my new favorite dress, I think of the smell of bleach, and I feel a surge of pride, because I didn't let the fire consume me, I just used it to forge a better version of myself. And that is a feeling that no amount of money or designer clothes can ever truly replace. I learned that standing up for yourself doesn't always mean shouting, it means being smart and staying calm while the other person loses their mind. I also learned that you should always document everything because you never know when you will need to prove your side of the story. My new apartment is my sanctuary, and I never let anyone in there who doesn't treat me with the respect I deserve. I have made new friends who are kind and supportive, and we have dinner parties where we laugh until our stomachs hurt. Life is too short to spend it with people who want to see you fail, and I am so grateful that I learned that lesson at 28 instead of 48. As I sit here in my quiet, clean living room, looking out at the lights of Manhattan, I know that I am exactly where I am supposed to be, and I have Sarah to thank for pushing me to get here, even if that wasn't her intention. So if you are going through a tough time with a bully or a bad roommate, just remember that their actions are a reflection of them, and not you. Keep your head up, stay focused on your goals, and always keep your receipts, because in the end, the truth will always come out, and justice will be served in the most poetic way possible. I am now looking forward to the next chapter of my life, which involves a new promotion at work and maybe even a vacation to Europe that I am funding with the money I saved by not having to replace my clothes with my own salary. Life is good, and I am finally happy in the city of my dreams, and that is the real victory in this whole story. Sarah can keep her bitterness and her small apartment while I keep my peace and my new silk blouses. Sometimes the bad things that happen to us are just the universe's way of clearing out the trash to make room for something much better and more beautiful. I hope Sarah finds peace one day, but I also hope she never forgets the girl who turned her petty revenge into a total life makeover. It is funny how things work out in the end if you just have a little bit of patience and a lot of determination. My grandmother always told me that you should never let the world make you hard, but you should also never let it walk all over you. I think she would be very proud of how I handled everything, and I know she would love the new necklace I bought to replace the one Sarah stole. It is not the same as the original, of course, but it represents a new beginning and a promise to myself to always value my worth. New York City is a tough place, but I am tougher, and I have the wardrobe to prove it. The sunset over the Hudson River looks particularly beautiful tonight, and I think I will go out for a nice dinner with my new friends to celebrate. We won't be going to any events where Sarah is working the coat check, because I have moved far beyond that part of my life. I am Lena, and I am a survivor of a terrible roommate, and I am thriving in a way I never thought possible, and that is the end of my revenge story, but just the beginning of my new life. I feel like I can finally breathe, and the air in my apartment is no longer heavy with tension or the smell of chemicals. It smells like vanilla candles and expensive perfume and success. And every time I hear a knock on my door, I don't feel a surge of fear anymore, I only feel excitement, because I know that I am safe and I am home. The city is loud and chaotic, but my heart is quiet and at peace. I have learned to trust my instincts and to never ignore the red flags again. If someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time, and don't wait for them to prove it again with a bottle of bleach. I am more careful now with who I let into my space and my heart, but I am also more open to the good people who have shown me what true friendship looks like. It is a balance that I am still working on, but I am getting better at it every day. The journey hasn't been easy, but it has been worth it to get to where I am today. And for anyone out there who is dealing with a Sarah in their life, just know that you are stronger than you think, and you have the power to turn any situation around in your favor. Just stay calm, keep your eyes on the prize, and remember that the best way to get back at someone who tried to ruin you is to be happy and successful without them. It is a lesson that took me some time to learn, but it is the most valuable one I have ever received. I am now looking at my reflection in the window, and I see a woman who is ready for anything, and I know that I am going to be just fine. The lights of the city are twinkling like diamonds, and I feel like I am one of them, shining bright and unbreakable in the dark. My story is one of many in this big city, but it is mine, and I am proud of it. I wouldn't change a single thing because everything that happened led me to this moment of absolute clarity and joy. And that is the most beautiful revenge of all. I hope this story inspires someone else to stand up for themselves and to realize that they deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. No one has the right to destroy your things or your spirit, and you have every right to fight back with the truth and the law on your side. Never be afraid to take up space and to demand what you are owed because you are worth it. And remember that sometimes the people who try to bring you down are actually just stepping stones on your way to something much bigger and better. So thank you, Sarah, for the bleach and the broken shoes and the ink, because without them, I would still be living in a toxic apartment with a fake friend. Instead, I am living my best life in a beautiful home with a career that I love and a future that is brighter than I ever imagined. The end of our friendship was the start of my real life, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I can hear the sounds of the city below me, the sirens and the honking horns, and the voices of millions of people all trying to find their way. I have found mine, and I am never going back. The past is behind me, and the future is waiting, and I am ready to meet it with a smile on my face and a brand new outfit that makes me feel like I can conquer the world. This is my New York story, and it has a very happy ending. I think I will go buy a bouquet of fresh flowers for my table tomorrow, because I can, and because I deserve to have beautiful things in my life. The cycle of negativity has been broken and replaced with a cycle of growth and positivity, and that is something that money can't buy, but Sarah's father's money certainly helped get it started. I am laughing as I write this because it really is quite a story to tell, and I hope it makes you smile too. We all have the power to be the hero of our own lives, and today I am definitely the hero of mine. Good night, New York, and good night to all the Sarahs out there who think they can win by being mean. You can't and you won't as long as there are people like me who know how to stand their ground. I am going to turn off the lights now and get a good night's sleep because I have a big day tomorrow and I want to look my best. And I know I will because I have a closet full of beautiful clothes and a heart full of peace, and that is the perfect combination for a great life.